What? No, no, it's not my fault. No, no, no. It's Carlton. Here's a really simple sentence. Don't accept blame for something you didn't do, and don't blame others for something you did. Simple, but not easy. We talk a lot in this house about integrity, and I just had this feeling today that I wanted to bring this out in front of the cameras and talk about it with you guys. Because that really simple two-way sentence back there, that is one of the hardest lessons I have ever had to learn in my entire life. And I mean it when I say this is still something that I work on daily. So much so that I'm going to tell you about something that happened like 2 days ago in just a little bit. And I've heard things like this for a long time. We all have. And I could even recite them, and I have. And in that moment, we mean it. But living it, like when the shit hits the fan and suddenly there's somebody that needs to be blamed, no. Suddenly that really simple thing is no longer so easy. Disclaimer, this episode is going to have some ups and downs. There's definitely some fun stuff, just like usual. But after this intro, there's definitely some truths that are going to come out. So if you're not into that today, we have some purely fun stuff. I'll link up a playlist right there. And if that's your jam today, feel free. No worries and no judgment. Just wanted to give a heads up. Still here? Okay. So I feel like the blame game is like the oldest and most common issue in relationships like since the beginning of time. It's just definitely been around however long relationships have been around. And you know why? Because people hate to be told what they're doing wrong. We cannot stand seeing our flaws. And we sure as shit don't want somebody else to point them out. I feel like sometimes it's so hard to let go of the reins of this kind of life that we feel like we're shaping. And that when somebody else points out something that we've done wrong and blames us for something, or way worse, points out something that we always do wrong, it feels like this personal attack on the whole life we've molded and created for ourselves. Now, already, I'm sure there are some people out there that are like, that doesn't apply to me. I don't ever do that. Two things. One, please DM me on Instagram or Facebook or just comment below and tell me your secrets. And two, there's a ton of other videos that you can watch. I'll throw another playlist up right here. Check some of those out because you already got this one down pat. Congratulations. I am very, very jealous of you. For the rest of us, let's break this down in the classic Part of Love 3-act structure. 1. Why does it bother us so much to be blamed for things, even when it's our fault? 2. How do we keep from accepting blame that doesn't belong to us, and why is it bad if we do? And 3. How do we keep from blaming others for our mistakes? So now that I am out of numbers, let's get into it. This first one is pretty straightforward to figure out, but it's probably the hardest to do. When should we take the blame? The answer is when it's our fault. What? Yeah, which obviously begs the follow-up question, how do we know when it's our fault? Which begs the follow-up answer, when it's your fault. A situation like this happened to Angelina and I the other day when we were out for a little run. If you watched the first episode of our new show, The Refinery, that happens on Fridays, you already know about this story. If you didn't, you can check it out right here. I'm not proud of this at all, but I'm sharing it because it's true. First, a little bit of context. Angelina and I are currently living out in the woods in the Northeast. There's no mailboxes, there's no sidewalks, some of the roads aren't paved. That said, if you are out for a run, you have to be super extra aware of cars. So I've been running since we got here a few months ago, and I've been running about 6 miles a day on average for the last month. So I've put a lot of miles into the road, and that means a lot of time out there. I know what corners are dangerous. I know just those little things that you pick up from being out and around something. I also just feel like it's my job to protect my wife, who has only come out 2 times so far. So we're jogging, and I see a couple of cars ahead, and I hear one coming from behind. So I kind of nudge her this way, and then that one passes, and I nudge her this way, and then another one turns, and I nudge her back. And so I'm sort of nudging her this way and that as, you know, cars are coming each way. And finally she turns around and goes, hey, you know what? Why don't we just go over here? Why don't we just like run right there? It's not a big deal. Like, it's fine. Just like, what? Which is a totally valid point, you know? She doesn't know that that's also a blind corner for a lot of cars that are going to be coming out from around this unpaved dirt road and just flying onto this one. So I turn to her and I calmly explain that the reason that we're running where we're running is because I like to be able to see the traffic and anticipate where they're going to be, because again, there's no sidewalks. And so it's just better to be proactive instead of reactive when a car suddenly blows past you. Except I didn't. I didn't do that, like, at all. I wish I would have. Man, that would have been great. Instead, I let my ego get in the way and I mumbled something about, well, fine, just do whatever you want. I guess you know better. I'll just run my thing, you run yours. Like, what? I don't even know why I got so upset, but I just felt like, well, I've been out here doing this and that was so stupid. I was wrong. Yes, I was trying to keep her safe, but I could have just explained that. It would have been so easy. And I wasn't wrong for trying to help her, but I was wrong for my reaction to her completely valid question. Even though I later apologized, it doesn't change the fact that my ego is clearly still intact and is something I have to watch out for. But once I accepted it and didn't try to make an excuse for why my reaction was valid, I saw what had actually happened more clearly. Because here's the thing, we'll try anything to rationalize our way out of being blamed for something. We'll look to scapegoat anybody else to keep ourselves like clean, because accepting blame means we were wrong. And most of the time we don't want to do that, you know, because our egos are like, you're not wrong, you're fucking awesome. Shut up, ego. Because our egos have given us like a myriad of ways out of taking the blame for something. Like, well, no, something else happened that made me do this. Or no, somebody said something that made me act like that. It's not my fault, it's their fault. But the truth is, if something is your fault, it's your fault. That reaction was my fault. And me not accepting that doesn't mean it's not true. And this is obviously not me shaming you. I mean, I suck at this. I'm obviously as bad at this as anybody, and Angelina or any of my past relationships, romantic, friendly, or otherwise, can attest to that. That said, here's a blanket statement / apology to all of my past relationships, romantic, friendly, or otherwise. I used to hate when something was my fault. I hated accepting that I had done wrong. Like, my ego was just so huge and I couldn't stand it. And the worst part is, it wasn't so much being wrong. I just felt like if I was wrong about something, that it made me somehow less of a person. I don't know if that makes sense. It did to me. I remember thinking, well, if I'm wrong here about this thing, then I'm not as good at life as a whole as I thought, which obviously is ridiculous. People make mistakes. Literally all people make mistakes. If you don't make a mistake, you're not human. You're an alien, and I can't trust you. Like, being wrong was something only stupid people did. When the truth is that only stupid people can't see the truth of how great it is to make mistakes and learn from them. When we're wrong, we learn and then we grow. Being wrong about things is the greatest tool that we have. But not accepting that tool, just ignoring all blame, or worse yet, placing the blame on somebody else's shoulders, that's just shitty. Like, I wish there was a better way to say it, but there's not. It's a shitty thing to do. Eloquence. So if you find yourself in a position where you've made a mistake, you missed a turn, you've said the wrong thing or done the wrong thing, you've cheated, you've lied, whatever, just accept it. And no matter what you do, don't put the blame on somebody else. Don't put the blame for something you did on anybody else except the person staring back at you in the mirror. Unless that person staring back at you is a ghost, because then your house is haunted. Don't worry about finishing this video. Just run. You can finish the video later. Ghosts. So this is another one that looks super easy, but of course isn't. Or is it? Oh. No, it's pretty hard. Don't accept what's not yours. That goes for both stolen goods and blame. Side note, don't be a thief. Gross. So, in my opinion, the two things I see most in the blame game are not coincidentally the first two things that we're talking about here. Almost literally always, they go together. Not accepting blame and blaming others is like the Blues Brothers of the blame game. A lot of B's in there. To me, blame is a lot like hot potato. You know, when you get hot potato, you never just throw it to the ground. You always throw it to somebody else. You play a lot of hot potato? Shut up. It's a metaphor. The point is, whenever we don't accept blame, usually the obvious next step is to pass it to somebody else. Blame doesn't just exist without an owner. I mean, it does, but it doesn't feel like that. So we always make sure that everybody knows that there is somebody to blame, and to prove it, we do our best to be like, it's not, I don't know who it is, but it's not me. I don't need to explain why that's wrong, right? And we sort of covered it in part 1 anyway. Accept the shit that's yours. But here's the flip side of that. If you're being blamed for something you didn't do, don't accept that. Now, speaking from an extremely personal place, I took a lot of the pain that I grew up with as my fault. I thought that the actions of a man who was taking his pain out on me meant that there was just something wrong with me. I was the issue. And that he wouldn't have a problem if it wasn't for me. But that's not true. And the even bigger issue is how long I carried that pain around for. Because he didn't pass his pain onto me, he multiplied it onto me. And now I carried that weight with me every day of my life. I let it be bigger than myself. And the truth is, it was never mine to carry. I made my choices, regardless of what happened to me before I was even a teenager. But that doesn't negate how I chose to deal with every interaction for the next decade and change. And honestly, I can live with the decisions I made. I'm not proud of them, but I take responsibility for those. But what I don't do anymore, I don't accept responsibility for what he did. This is a real issue in a ton of relationships, not just romantic, all types of relationships. If something goes wrong, blame is either ignored or misplaced, which leads to a ton of pain that doesn't need to exist. I don't know how to help everyone, but I know that a huge part of it is starting here. We need to accept blame for the things that we do wrong, but we don't know shit to blame that doesn't belong to us. Okay, so the last thing is like the final ingredient in the perfect cocktail. Like we take what we learned from the first two, and then we just round it out with this last one. We learn to accept the blame for our mistakes, hard as it can be sometimes, because it's a learning tool that keeps us from making those mistakes again. And we're no longer taking shit for other people's mistakes, even if they try and lay it on us. It's not your job to carry somebody else's baggage. That's not love. It's not love from them. It's not love from you. That's submission to someone doing you harm, whether they mean to or not. You deserve better than that, from them and from yourself. Lastly, sometimes we are going to be the ones who, in an effort to relieve ourselves of blame, just throw that hot potato on somebody else. Don't do that. And if you do that, just realize how much more pain you're causing. Because now we've brought up issues of honesty and trust, self-awareness, anger, pride, all sorts of shit. You don't want that. Just accept whatever you did wrong, learn from it, and move on. It's actually a win-win, because accepting your own blame and being able to learn from that means you're self-aware. It means you're capable of integrity and honor. And more than anything, it means that you love that other person enough to accept when you're wrong. That's everything. Be that version of yourself. And again, it's not easy. I know firsthand. I still suck at it sometimes, but I try to learn from the mistakes that I make and accept what I've done wrong. Because accepting the blame that's yours and not accepting what doesn't belong to you, stolen goods or otherwise, is a part of love. Oh, I liked this one. That was fun.